What's happening, people? I'm DJ Graish, and in today's video we're making Liquid. To celebrate the release of the new Solstice sample pack from Ghost Syndicate, they've kindly sponsored this video and sent me a copy of the pack so that I can show you guys how to make an atmospheric liquid drum and bass track. This pack contains everything you'll need, including the drums, the bass, the synths, sound effects and stabs, and if you'd like to grab a copy, the link is in the description. So let's get started, and I'm going to open up the Ghost Syndicate folder here. Alright, so let's listen to some of these kicks. Alright, I'm going with kick 13 to start with, so I'm just going to drag that into this audio track here. And before I forget, I'm actually going to put the BPM to 174, so you can just click on it and you can type it in. Or alternatively, if you like, you can just drag like this. I'm also just going to loop this first bar here, and we're going to put the kick on the first beat, and I'm also going to hold down Alt and drag it over here to this one that's sort of halfway between beats 3 and 4, and it sounds like this. Next, I'm going to check out the snares. So snare 6 has a nice snap to it, so I'll just drag that one in, and I'm just going to hold down Alt and then drag it over so that we've got it on beats 2 and 4. So let's check out some of these top loops. That one's nice. Alright, so top 28 is basically just a very simple one. The sample is at 174 BPM and my project's at 174, so I can actually turn off warping. As long as I'm going to stick with this tempo, I can have this sample not warped. Obviously, if you are going to work at a different tempo, you'd want to leave warping on. Alright, so we do have another section here which is called shuffles, and I want to check out some of these. So as you can hear, a shuffle is basically just like a little bit of a breakbeat. It's a couple of hits, it's basically a hat and a ghost snare. So I really like shuffle 5, so I'm just going to bring that in and put it there, and let's have a listen. So I'm just going to copy the first couple of hits of the shuffle and then just paste them here at the end, and let's have a listen. Alright, now I'm just going to do a little bit of balancing before we go any further. So as you can see, my master is hitting to plus 3 decibels, and that's something that you probably don't want to happen. So let's just turn everything down to start with. So to do that, click on the kick channel and hold down shift and click on the last drum channel like that. And then when you move the fader, you're going to see that all of the faders move together. Just move it down far enough that nothing's peaking at the master. Alright, I'm going to delete these 2 MIDI tracks, and then I'm going to group all these drums together. So I like to stay organised, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the top one, hold down shift, click the last one, and now you've got them all selected. Press Command and G to group it together, Command and R to rename it, and then we're going to type drums in capital letters. Now that we've got our drums all grouped together, I'm going to just show you really quickly how to do a little bit of processing before we move on. If you go into your audio effects here, first thing I'm going to reach for is the glue compressor and just put that on the drums. And then I'm going to bring down the threshold until you start to see the needle moving. So as you can see, I only needed to bring down the threshold a little bit, and obviously the needle's moving somewhere between 0 and 5, so you could say that it's doing about 2.5 dB of gain reduction right now. It's all about what it sounds like, you know, so if you want to do 5 dB of gain reduction, feel free. If you only want to do 1 dB, it's up to you. I probably wouldn't really go much more than 5 at this stage though. And then there's another effect here called the drum bus, which I like to use. One thing you need to do though is be careful, because if you just put the drum bus straight on there, it's going to boost the drums by roughly 4 or 5 dB. So what I do is turn down this trim by about 4.5 dB just to start with, and that should gain match it to how it was before. And if we play it, it should be roughly the same volume as it was. Now what the drum bus does is it actually distorts them very slightly, and you can see here you've got the drive and you've got soft, medium and hard, and by default it's on 20%. Sometimes I like to turn that up a little bit and maybe put it on 30 something percent. And that's all I'm going to do with the drum bus. And there's one more effect that I like to put on there, which is called To Tape 8, and this is a tape saturation plugin. So you can use this one, which is free, or you can get your own tape saturation plugin. But one thing that I like to do is get rid of this flutter, get rid of this head bump, and crank up this input and then crank down the output to maybe 0.13. What I really am trying to do is gain match it. So you can see before it was peaking at minus 2.6. It's always worth doing an A-B comparison to see what this stuff is doing to your drums. So the way you do that is you click the first one, hold down shift and click the last effect like that, and then Command and G. That groups them together, and at the left side of the group you've got this extra on and off button which turns off the whole group. So now what you can do is see how your drums sound before, and then turn it on. So what this group does as a whole is it glues the drums together, tames the top end, adds some nice saturation, and makes the whole drums sound like one drum kit as opposed to various different samples all playing at the same time. So that's how I process my drums, and now I'm going to go back to the Solstice sample pack and have a listen to some of these samples and try and get a bit of a chord structure together for this tune. So how about synth one-shots? Alright, so AM synth piano sounds nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the simpler and drag that into the project, and then go back to the sample pack and drag synth piano in there. So I think I'm going to need more than 1 bar. In fact, I think I'm going to need 4 bars. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get the drums, highlight all the drums, and just press Command and D 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now we've got 4 bars of drums. Now I'm going to highlight this section here, press Shift Command and M to create a MIDI clip, and then just draw in a note like that. Sounds pretty nice. Just going to do a couple of things to it. So I'm going to go into audio effects. I'm going to get the EQ8 and put that on there. Let's just make sure there's no sub bass in it. And really quickly I want to show you how to use sends and returns. So these 2 tracks here, which are labelled A reverb and B delay, which you can also see here in the mixer, they're called return channels. And if you want to send something to them, then you have these 2 knobs here, the send A and B. For example, if I wanted to send this sound to the reverb, then all I would do is turn up send A, and when I play it, you can see that there's level coming through on return track A, meaning that this sound is now being sent to that reverb unit. Now Ableton Live has the normal reverb unit, but it also has another one called hybrid reverb, which I like to use. So I'll be deleting that reverb and then replacing it with hybrid reverb. And then you can choose one that you like, for example a hall, and you've got this digital long haul or long synth haul, put it on there. Whenever you use an effect on a return channel, you need to make sure you put the dry and wet to 100%. And I'm also just going to turn the decay time down to 2 seconds. And I'm also going to click this EQ tab and take out a lot of the bass from the reverb, somewhere like that. So now when I crank up send A, it will now send it to this hybrid reverb, and it sounds like this. And you can choose whether to fully send it or maybe send it slightly less like that. Alright, so let's have a listen to some more of these sounds and see if we can find something that'll go with this piano. So I quite like this D sharp synth Atmo 2, so I'm just going to drag that in, and I'm just going to chop this up. So first of all, I'm going to transpose it so it's kind of matching with the piano. Just going to turn off warping actually, and then I'm going to pitch this down by 3 semitones. And then I'll chop it there, and I'm going to pitch this up by 2 semitones. And then I'm basically matching the pattern, so I'll chop it there again. And then I'm going to pitch this down by 5 semitones. So what we end up with is this. And if you want, what you can do is crossfade these sections into each other using these little crossfades like this. That sounds good. So let's hear it with the drums. And what I'm going to do is apply some EQ8 to this. And what I sometimes like to do with pad sounds like this is take out the top and bottom and just leave this sort of mid-range area. And don't forget, we have our reverb on a send, so if I want to add reverb to this, all I have to do is turn up send A, and then I've instantly got a whole reverb. And you're sort of placing it in the same space as the piano now. Alright, so there's this bonus section here, and let's have a listen to some of these vocal textures. So let's go with vocal texture 02 and drag that in. And what I'm going to do is just chop it up in a similar way to the pad. I'm just going to go back in and have a listen to some of these synth one-shots, and you've got these synth leads here. So let's bring in a simpler, and I'm going to use this very basic synth sound, E synth lead 05. So I'm just going to put some effects on it before I put in the notes, and the first thing I'll add is the delay. I'm also going to add a hybrid reverb, and I'm going to put it on a plate reverb and put the dry and wet to about 30%. And I'll just turn it down a little bit and create a MIDI clip. So again, highlight the section, Shift Command and M to create the MIDI clip, and then you can draw in some notes. Alright, so I'm going to do a bit more tidying up. So we've got our piano, we've got the pad, vocal texture, and this latest one, which we can call synth lead. And I'm just going to group all of those together, and I'm going to call it Instrum. Alright, so now that we've got some instruments and some drums, it's time to add the bass. So let's have a listen to the Solstice sample pack and listen to some of these bass sounds So I'll go into bass one shots and listen to some of these. That's a really nice 808 style bass. What I'm going to do is get the simpler, put that in there, get this 808 style bass, and as you can see, it's in C sharp. So what I'm going to do is just click on controls here and then transpose it down by one semitone, which means now the sample will be in C, and then you can just play it on your MIDI keyboard like any other instrument. So I'll just create a MIDI clip, and here's that 808 sound. One thing I'd like to do is to do a double kick at the beginning. So to do that, you can just drag the kick drum while holding down Alt. And now we've got that double kick at the beginning, I'm just going to do the same thing with the bass. And one thing you can do is just experiment with adding saturation to things. So again, I'm going to grab the 2-tape 8 and just put that on the instruments group. And then I'm just going to turn down the flutter and the head bump, crank up the input and crank down the output, and then have a listen. So that's this whole instruments group together being saturated with the tape saturator. And it's a very subtle effect, but it just kind of makes it have this analog warmth. And I'm also going to copy the same tape saturator onto the bass and put it there. So you just hold down Alt and drag it across and it'll copy it. So let's have a listen to that bass. And I'm just going to rename this bass as 808 and I'm going to put it in its own little group and call it bass. So now that we've got our drums, bass and instrument groups and we've got a total of 12 tracks, it's time to do the arrangement. To do the arrangement, what I usually do is just highlight everything and press Command and X to cut it and then paste it where you want the drop to be. So in this case, I'm going to paste it on bar 33, and then that gives us this whole 32 bar section to do the intro. So what do we want in the intro? Well, I'd like to have some drums, but I might make the drums slightly different. So I'm just going to paste them there. And then what I was thinking of doing is with this top loop, as you can hear, this top loop is a kind of one with a lot of shuffling going on. And I thought maybe it'd be good to try out some of the other top loops and maybe have a bit more of a simple one. So I'm going to go into the Solstice sample pack and then just have a listen to some of the top loops. And I'm going to choose one of the ones that's essentially just sort of straight hi-hats. And I'm going to go with this top loop 7. So I'll just drag that in and let's have a listen. Alright, so how is this tune going to start? Well, I think I'm going to have the piano, just the piano and the drums and bass. So I'll just hold down Alt and drag the piano to the beginning there. Alright, so we're going to have 16 bars of drums and piano, and then when we get to this part here, I'm going to add the pad and vocal texture and synth lead. So all of this is going to come in here. I'll just turn down that vocal texture a bit more. And since this part's sounding so nice, I'm actually going to add some kind of rainforest sounds. So I've got this ambient DNB pack that's got this little bird sample. So I'm just going to drag that in, and this is what it sounds like with everything. Alright, so I've had a chance to do the arrangement now, and I'm just going to quickly talk you through what I've done. So I've created a separate channel for this part of the piano, and I've called it Intro Piano, and the reason why is because it's got this delay on it, and it sounds like this. And then the normal piano is the same, but it doesn't have the delay on it. Now, at the end of this first 16 bar section, I have automated a couple of effects, and I'm just going to show you how that works. So you see that red line going downwards, that's an automation line, and that's just showing what's happening to one of the controls. So in this case, it's controlling the frequency of this auto filter here. And you can see the filter, and it says frequency, and there's a red dot there, right? So watch what happens to that frequency control here as the red line goes down. So using these red lines, you can control almost anything in Ableton Live, and it's called automation because you are making these controls move automatically. So I've done a few different things. So the auto filter is also being automated to turn on just for 2 bars. So you see this red line, it goes up and it says on, and then for 2 bars, and then it turns off again. There's another device that turns on and off, and that's the delay unit. So as you can see, the delay unit comes on. I've left this one on for 4 bars so that it's the tail of the delay carries on. And then once that's done, it just turns off again. All right, so then we go into the next 16 bar section, which is, as you saw before, it's basically just the piano, the pad, the vocal texture, and the synth lead. And then I added this rainforest sound. So remember I was saying before that the intro piano is on a separate channel because it's got delay on it. So when we get to just before the drop and I wanted to put a little bit of delay on the last note, all I had to do was put a note in that channel instead, and this is what it does. Alright, during when I was doing the arrangement, I did have a chance to add a couple of extra instruments. One of them is this Rhodes, which is called Rhodes Ascending Melody, and it goes upwards and it goes like this. Very simple. And then I also used Contact for this little piano tinkle, and it sounds like this. And I've actually panned the Rhodes to the left and I've panned the piano tinkle to the right. And then at the end of each section, I've added this amen break fill. So that's just the standard amen break. And as you can see, I've automated a filter to go downwards during it. So it sounds like this. So that's just a way of sort of breaking it up so it's not just the same loop going on and on and on, and it's a way of transitioning from one section to the next. So I hope you've learned something. If you did, make sure you click the like button, and without further ado, here is the finished atmospheric liquid drum and bass tune. Thanks again to Ghost Syndicate for sponsoring the video, and if you want to grab the Solstice sample pack, the link is in the description. If you want to learn how to make jungle music, click this video here, and if you want to see my entire playlist of tutorials, there it is. I'm DJ Grace, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.